Hi, welcome to the All Things LGBTQ interview show, where we interview LGBTQ guests who are making important contributions to our communities.
All Things LGBTQ is taped at Orca Media in Montpelier, Vermont, which we recognize as being unceded Indigenous land.
Thanks for joining us and enjoy the show. Hi, everybody, in All Things LGBTQ land. For our interview tonight, we're interviewing Buffy Aakaash, right?
Yes.
Yes, good, yes. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. Buffy grew up around the hills and lakes of New Jersey. He's lived in a small town, big cities, and rural queer communities for the last 40 years. He's engaged in poetry, writing, growing food, and doing healing work. Currently, he resides in Vermont with his four-legged pet fellow, Bodhi, the pug, which is somewhere around here. They have been published by Sweaty Cat Pred, New Feathers, Main Street Rag, and numbers of others. His chapbook, published in 2022, Untangling the Knots, which was nominated for the Vermont Book Awards. Do you have that one with you?
I do, right here.
All right, there it is.
Available
Yes.
everywhere you buy fine books.
And the Marion Gleason Memorial Award. He has an MFA in playwriting from Columbia University. In addition to being a writer, he freelances as a media designer. Isn't that great to have a friend who's a media designer? And some of his work can be seen at, and it's www.
BuffyAakaashPoetry.com.
All right, There you go. And we'll put that across there so people can see it.
Okay.
So we're here really to discuss your new book. Although I think you did like a children's book, not the writing, but the graphics. Is that it?
Yeah, I designed a children's book
Yeah.
for a client of mine who wanted to write a book about her cat, and she wanted to include her grandchildren. So we wrote a story together, and I did the layout and design and got it printed.
Great.
Yeah, on a very limited printing, very
I know,
private
but hey,
sort of
you know,
thing. But
that's
it
kind of
turned out
fun
really
to-
well. I was really proud of how it turned out. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I like doing it. So I'd love to do more of that.
Yeah. So what does your writing process look like? Are you the kind of person that gets up first thing in the morning, or writes late into the night?
Absolutely
or,
not. Absolutely not first thing in the morning. I'm a late night person. And a lot of my poems, I think they begin with kind of a daydream, or kind of a nighttime kind of thing, just before as you're going off to sleep and you're between that waking state and the dream state. A first line or a title or something will come to me. And if I listen to that, which is kind of like a muse in a way, then I will grab my phone and sometimes not even turn the light on and go to the Notes app and start, typing it in, which is sometimes hard to do with a finger because my fingers don't really move like most people do. And so if I really listen to that, then often a poem comes out. That's good, but it's a hard thing to kind of get yourself up.
And so that's where you kind of start from.
Yeah, often that's where I start from. Unless I feel like, kind of an exercise, sometimes I'll, I don't do a lot of formal poetry, but sometimes I like to experiment with, writing a sonnet or...
And you do haiku too, don't you?
Yes,
Yeah.
of course, yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that haiku was one of the ways that I started writing poetry because it's such an easy way to kind of, and it's much more difficult than you think as you learn, as years go by. If you take the journey of writing haiku, it's not just 3 lines, it's 3 lines that include certain things in them. So I really like exploring that. I wouldn't say I'm a masterful haiku writer, but I find it was a really good way to start writing poetry.
Yeah. And, you know, like, when do you know a poem's finished? I think that's always a hard one. I personally hate editing, so done.
Yeah, yeah.
But, you know, for you, how do you feel like, I mean, what do you think?
I never stop editing a poem. I feel like if it's really a living poem, it's never really done. And so, you know, a lot of times, you know, I'll look at a poem years later and I'll be like, well, what was I trying to say there? You know, I was in a different space. But even if you're in a different space, a poem has to speak to beyond the timing, you know.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the time that you wrote the poem, but it needs to have some sort of universal sort of time.
Yeah.
And so I'll go back in and I'll say, well, that phrase or that word is not really the correct word. And what would be better there, and it would speak more to, not for the time now, so that I transfer the poem into a, you know, from 10 years ago to now, and then 10 years later, it's no longer makes sense, but something that really could make sense in a universal sort of way.
Yeah. And do you have specific images or places or mindset or any place that you go back to constantly, do you think? I mean, do you find yourself like at periods of your life maybe trying to work out certain issues or?
Yeah, well, I would say that overall, nature creeps back in all the time. I think that's true for a lot of poets in Vermont. It's really hard to not actually include some sort of metaphorical allusion to nature. And so, you know, and people say, oh, nature poems, they're kind of old hat. You know, I've run into some journals that say, you know, we don't publish nature poetry because, you know, they just get
Depends on
so
how you
much
use
of it
it.
because nature speaks to people and it really opens a poetic door for people, I think. And so that comes back to me a lot.
And, you know, it depends on how people use it too.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, there are some nature poems that are really kind of universal feelings
Yeah.
that people can relate to. So would you read us one of your poems right now?
Sure. Let's see.
And
Why?
give us a little, you know, like synopsis, not of the poem, but, you know, like,
Sure. Why don't I read the title poem for the new book,
Okay.
Breaking. And this was written after a very long-term relationship came to a fairly sudden end.
I
And
love
so,
this poem.
And my realization looking back at a day when I realized but didn't want to realize what was going on. So it's called Breaking.
And this is a good example of nature and,
Yes,
you know,
and
a
you're
very deep and heartfelt.
right, exactly. It's a good example of that. Breaking. With my love of many years and another now his love of not yet as many years, like the skydiving the year before, this was really their trip. This was what he wanted. His fancy obliged for this season of the orcas, for they had begun to surface. From my side of the boat, I could see through the cabin, the two of them side by side looking out at the water. And yes, the whales were coming, but I sensed another excitement. Could almost imagine them holding hands, were they? With anticipation. I chose to turn away, because who am I to question love? Just then, the captain and crew alerted us to look off the starboard bow. There were oohs and ahs as we saw them just beneath our boat's reflection. When they emerged through the wake, it was like the elephant in the room became visible. Only this was the pod breaking, everything large we had kept at bay. And I knew with the blur of black on white, the spouting off of some needed release deep down, I would soon be alone.
That's a beautiful, I love that. And so when you write this, are you writing, or any of your poems, are you writing for yourself, for an audience? Do you think you have a voice? And what does that mean to you?
I would say I don't think about my voice. I think that naturally a voice comes through. We all have that. But I try not to think about, my voice so much when I write. I just write, and then I look at it later and, sometimes some of my poems seem very different from others. I'm not sure whether someone could say, oh, I know that sounds like Buffy, because I don't really think anyway that I write that way with a voice that comes through that's unique. So that's sort of my answer to that one.
Do you have an expectation that like people will take away what you want them to, or are you okay with like people just taking away what they can or how they interpret themselves, the poem that you're reading?
Well, that's a good question. I think that I really like when people come up with something about a poem that I wrote that I didn't really think about when I was writing it. And they found something, but I realized suddenly that it was a subconscious thing, most likely, that I was thinking, because it made total sense, but I wasn't thinking that really. So, and then that sort of like brings up the whole question of why do we write poetry? Like, are we trying to reach someone, or are we doing it as a therapeutic experiment for ourselves to
Or
try
both.
to opening, or both? And I think it's generally, for me, it's both.
Yeah.
I think some people don't give a flying hoot what someone else thinks about their poetry, and that's fine. That means they're using it for therapeutic reasons, and so.
I find going back to memories a lot as a way of kind of looking at the world.
Yeah.
Like just remembering things from like childhood or
And
adolescence.
I want to read another poem that
Okay.
is about that, really.
Great.
And it's related also to this relationship that came to an end, this breaking that I had that led to so many other things. But this one's called Remembering Last Year at Hood Canal. This time last year, we were paddling together in deep roiling waters in Hood Canal, checking crab traps for that catch to feed the joyful celebration of our mother. For she had become my mother too. We paddled well, the two of us, a left then a right, if too much on the left, a stroke or two on the right. This was how we went through life, on course for a future I thought I knew, to a point farther away than it first had appeared. That night we had crab and laughed and drank together. Then we stood in the dark in the ocean breeze. The sailor in my blood knew we'd been blown off course, our love irrevocably lost overboard, sent to the bottom, along with the weight of empty words. Sometimes I stand on this different shore, see him on the boat fading into beyond, every day a little farther, less and less I know him, and less I remember.
So was this written before or after?
This was written after, recalling this time that we had.
That was so beautiful.
That was so beautiful and
Yeah.
lovely, and and then, because, when I lost him, I also lost, I thought of his mother
other
as my
family.
own mother, because I had lost my mother years before, and so when we were together, she was my mother as well, and so I lost her as well in the breakup, in a way,
Yeah, that's hard. And, because a lot of us who are LGBTQ, we have our chosen families.
Right, exactly.
And when something happens to them, it's sort of
We feel
devastating
it.
in a way that,
Yeah.
might be otherwise.
The same,
You
and
know,
I
the
would still
family.
consider him part of my family, but we don't, it's like that distant cousin now rather than than your husband
Yeah, yeah.
or wife, your spouse.
So who shapes your work? Who do you go-to? Who's your go-to poets when you're...
Well, there's some older ones. You know, I really was jazzed about brevity. You know, like so E. E. Cummings, William Carlos Williams. They were very helpful for me. You know, like going along with haiku. You know, you can say a lot in 3 lines.
Yeah.
Right. But some
Isn't
of those.
there the Red Wagon?
Huh?
The Red Wagon.
Yes.
Yeah, I love
William
that.
Carlos
Yeah.
Williams. Yes. Yeah, one of my favorites.
Yeah.
You don't know exactly what it's about, but it
it's just
doesn't
so
matter.
beautiful.
It's
I
beautiful.
know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so I love that, and then you know I'm also I have a spiritual kind of thing that comes through my poetry. So Hafiz, you know, that whole genre of poetry, and then love, you know, is important to me. So of course Pablo Neruda was very important. His poems about love, of course, are extremely expressive, and you know, and so more recently, I would say, you know, I picked up a book a few years ago by Belle Fox Martin called Stone Pear. And, you know, she's a lesbian poet, not very well known, and she passed away last year. I was sad to hear. But her book, Stone Pear, was very, very inspiring to me. As well as Jeffrey Harrison, who read at a conference a couple of years ago in Vermont. So,
And so, are you drawn much to gay and lesbian writers, or?
you know, other than the oldies, but you know, I don't really, I don't necessarily follow poets because of their
Gender
or their
stuff,
queerness.
identity, yeah.
Their queer identity.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's any, you know,
I don't know.
Allen Ginsberg, you know, like,
Yeah.
you know, certainly he had some impact on me reading him and knowing that he was gay
Yeah.
and being such an amazing.
It's one of my all-time favorite
yeah.
poems is Howl,
Yeah, right.
you know? I wonder if that would be published today,
That's a good question.
given the style and the, you know, all of the...
Yeah, it's very rough.
Yeah.
You know, people are more stylized today with their
Yeah.
writing, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, I was just curious to see whether...
All the beat poets, I'm not sure if any of them would get published today.
I know.
What a
And,
loss.
huh?
What a loss it would be.
I know. Part of our history.
Yeah.
So, what do you think poetry can offer people right now in the tumultuous world we're living in?
Well, I would say, you know, the most important thing that poetry offers is truth. You know, and so I think poets tell the truth. And if, you know, and it doesn't mean necessarily the story that you tell that tells the truth can be fictional. But I think that the best poems actually somehow reach a truth that is hard to see in prose stories and other things. It's just not, there's something that jives you in a way that just didn't so much with a regularly told story.
And I think you were talking about, talking to you at one point about like how you can write a whole, almost a biography or a whole story in a poem that would take so much more time in a short story or a novel.
Right.
That you can condense all this into, 40 lines.
Yeah, I'm in the process of reading poems for a contest, and it's amazing how many poems try to tell a story. And I had to start looking at them in different ways because is this poem just telling the story and with a line break? Or is there something that is really rich about it that you couldn't tell if it were just told as a story? Mm-hmm. And that's really kind of like the dividing line for me in deciding what's a good poem that tells a story and what isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's a truth. There's a truth that comes through that you don't necessarily see on a first read anyway, of a prose story.
Yeah. And, you know, someone's just starting out and you're their mentor, or you're in a writing group and there's people who are just starting their poetry journal journey. What would you tell them about writing and what's important about writing poetry?
Well, I would say for me, the most important thing I learned in writing is to say yes when someone offers you a reading. I think that new poets are very shy, you know, because what good am I, you know, like how much poetry is getting written, and, you know, but I'll tell you, like hearing yourself read a poem out loud in front of an audience and seeing how they react and not taking the reactions personally is a huge opening thing, was for me, to actually get out there and show people that. So I would suggest, you know, that I'm part of the Poetry Society of Vermont, which is an excellent organization.
Come join it. We have fun.
Please. It's very easy to join. It's not very expensive.
Great group of people.
PoetrySocietyOfVermont.org. You can become a member there, and there's lots of benefits. And like I said, it's not very expensive. And you know, we have 3 workshops a year that you get a discount on, and we have lots of other events that happen throughout the year. And we have I'm facilitating a monthly poetry group where we get together on Zoom and read poetry and comment about that. And that is another way.
I got to join that.
Also, I
Yeah.
know, please do. And that's another way that you can read your work, hear how it sounds when you're reading it. And
Do you do it monthly?
and yeah, monthly, 3rd Thursdays. And
On Zoom?
It's open to all members. It's on Google Meet.
Okay.
And
Not Zoom.
Not Zoom.
I don't know if I know how to use
We
Google.
use Meet. It's a little different, but it's worth getting used to. We had 25 people at this last one in January.
How do you get to comment on everybody's writing? You must be there till midnight.
Well, we actually had to cut it off at some point, and I said, you guys will be first next time. But, you know, not all the people brought poems to read, but a lot of people just come and listen, especially if they're there for the first
Yeah.
time. And
Or
you
get
know, that's a great
ideas,
thing,
or-
too. You get ideas. It's
Yeah.
inspiring to hear.
Listening to other people
Yeah,
read, yeah.
And we have a lot of good poets that are part of Poetry Society, so it's worth joining just for that, to kind of like find inspiration.
So what's your role? Do you have a...
Well, I
President,
have
vice
been the
president?
treasurer for the
Yeah.
last 2 years,
Uh-huh.
and I am now also the editor of the Troubadour, the Mountain Troubadour,
Which comes out once a year, right?
which comes out once a year, and that's another benefit of being a member. Everyone gets a hard copy of it as long as you've paid your dues, and
And a lot of dues probably goes to making that book, right?
yeah, and it does. That's our biggest expense, is the book, and it's a great book, and you have a chance to submit poetry it's all filled with members' poetry. And so we have several contests throughout the year.
And then you have reading.
And then we have readings, a reading to bring out to launch the book. We have a book
Right.
launch with the reading, yeah. And yeah, and then this is my first year doing it, so wish me luck on that, because, you know,
When do you have to decide by?
it's another book project.
And I think you have till the end of
The
January.
end of
to get it out?
January,
Yeah.
so you could join
Or get
and
it in?
submit poems.
Yeah.
Yeah, where you submit 3 poems, and you know, 40 lines or less, three poems, each 40 lines or less, and yeah. And by the 31st of January.
All right, there's
and
time.
There is time,
Yeah.
as long as this airs before then.
Yeah, really. Yeah. So, what's your next project in writing? Are you working on a new book?
Yeah, I am. I have another manuscript I'm working on that is poems about water.
Uh-huh.
as you know, in here, both of the poems I read were water poems, so they won't be in the book. But I have a lot of other books, well, poems about water, and so I've put together this manuscript that I've sent out to a few places. But you know, going back and looking at it, I'm like, oh, it's not quite ready. You need some work, and so that's another thing, you know, for new poets is finding friends who are willing to look at your work and who you trust, you know, and with the red pen, you know, and that has been great for me, and so that's what I'm in the process now of sharing it around. It's already been through several people, but now I have to figure it out from there.
Okay, and would you read a last poem for us, and maybe?
Do you have a request?
Oh, let me see. What was on? Let's see.
There's the poem that won the award, "The Beauty Before Us."
Yeah, do that.
Okay. It's a short one. The beauty before us. We must fall in love with beastly things, lascivious, brash, and pithy things, bend our knee in grace of circumstance, braid misgivings in tales of radiance, forgiveness received, offenses softened, surrender to expanding beauty, engendering bonds, give birth, belonging, falling down before our calling, falling down before our calling to see the beauty in all the living, resting, breathing, brave in grieving.
Thank you. And we're going to leave the audience with that. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you so much,
And,
Linda.
We'll see you soon.
Good.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. And until next time, remember, resist.